like it's back.
Good. The chat?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm going to keep everybody muted except the speaker, and I'm going to introduce our first speaker right away. And I wanted to bring everybody's attention to the chat. We've got some instructions in there, and I'll read them. The meeting's being recorded. If you have a question, put it in the chat with the word question before it. I'll pick the questions and I'll ask as many as possible. Participants will be muted. And please turn off your video to save bandwidth if you can. And that will help the audio of the whole thing and make the recording better and make everybody's live experience better. So we are recording now, and I'm going to let in some more people here. And we'll start. I'm going to turn it over first to our member, Khin Khin Gyi. Dr. Khin Khin Gyi, it's all yours. You have the floor, Khin Khin.
Thank you. Good morning, Culver City. It's an honor to launch my campaign in July, as this is the month that we celebrate our independence. Secondly, I'd also like to thank our dynamic duo, our president, Pete Rockwell, and his co-pilot, Cynthia Hart, who is also our corresponding secretary. And all of you folks for joining us this morning. This is not the usual way we celebrate our 4th of July here in Culver City, but this is the first time in our 68-year history of the club. And I can say that as a past president of the club that we're celebrating it this way. But this is a safer way to celebrate 4th of July. So welcome to the festivities. First of all, my name is Khin Khin Gyi, and I'm a 30-year resident of Culver City, a minority female physician, and an immigrant who came to this country when I was a teenager with my parents on a green card. I became a new naturalized citizen as a junior in college, and I've been a registered Democrat since. As a board member, fast forward to recent history, as a board member of the Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community, or CCSC for short, we studied the health hazards of living close to the Inglewood oil field and found increased prevalence of asthma, cardiovascular disease, and cancers. Since 2009, I have attended the monthly meetings off the CAP, which is Citizens Advisory Panel meeting, and have voiced the concerns of the residents surrounding the Inglewood oil field at these meetings. As a member of the Sierra Club West LA, since 2014, I have worked to increase the enrollment of municipalities in the Clean Power Alliance, which is a nonprofit that provides electrical energy from renewable resources to the localities. As such, I support Culver City's plan to amortize and phase out the drilling and fracking in Culver City's portion of the Inglewood oil field, which is right next to Blair Hills. Environmental justice often interfaces with social justice issues such as affordable housing, homelessness, access to affordable health care, and criminal justice reform. I support the 3-year program proposed by the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, otherwise known as LAHSA, that would deploy a combination of bridge housing, rental subsidies, and rehousing services, all leading to permanent placements for the 15,000 people who are considered most vulnerable to COVID-19 due to their age or health condition. Since the end of May, we have seen demonstrations across the nation and the world bringing to the forefront the topic of Black Lives Matter and that of criminal justice reform. We are appreciative of the fact that CCPD has adopted My Brother's Keeper policy since. If any of you had listened to the Culver City Council meeting of June 22nd, you would have been pleasantly surprised to hear that the Culver City's CFO, Onyx Jones, mentioned that the CCPD chief, Sid, saved $982,000 by leaving 4 police officer positions vacant, culminating in savings of $1.5 million to the general fund. Following Councilmember Lee's suggestion, those savings could be geared towards the hiring of 4 social workers, such that we could have social services presence all 5 days of the week, rather than just 1 day of the week, as we currently have now. In summary, I'd like to go to my slides, so let me see if I can go to sharing screen here. Okay. Okay, let me go to the next slide here. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to advance to the next slide. Let's see. I'm trying to get my cursor back here. Only the first slide is appearing.
You didn't put it on share. Get out of that. Get out of that. Here.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the cursor back now.
It's not working. Oh man, you didn't put it on share.
I did. I clicked on share, and that's why we got the first screen. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what to do. You have to.
We have to get the cursor back. Oh, okay. Screen sharing has stopped as the shared window is closed. Oh, I closed the whole window.
With it in just a second. Hold it. Where is it?
Okay. It's right there.
Okay, we're gonna come over here. This over here. Share it, and then we're going to open this,
Open it.
and then we're going to
We'll click on that one.
play. Here it is.
It's not advancing. That's oh, okay.
Ask them if they can hear you.
The cursor, this is still in the middle of the...
Yeah, but you're not, it's not being shared.
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, good.
Oh, they can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
we can
trying
hear
to
you.
get, yeah.
Oh, you can't see it anymore.
We can't see the screen at the moment. We can't see the share screen at the moment, but
You can't see the shared screen.
at the moment,
Oh.
we've seen it a couple of times, but right now it's not on the screen on my computer.
I think we have to go slide by slide manually and then click this,
Yeah,
click
but,
on
yeah, but
this.
you're not on share. You're not on share. Yeah.
You have to get rid of this
Now-
stuff first.
And we're sharing, and we're gonna play. Should work. Here it is. works. There, don't, it should go down. You should be on now. You should be able to talk.
I can see the share screen now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry for.
And I just saw the slide change.
Oh, okay. In summary, I'd like to mention that as part of my environmental adequacy plan, we'd like to phase out drilling and fracking with an amortization plan, which the city is currently embarked upon, and I agree with their plan to do that. And then transform the Inglewood oil field to a solar or wind farm. While we're doing that, in the process of doing that, we still need to enforce a 2,500-foot setback from homes and sensitive populations. We need to set up a 24/7 fence line monitoring at the perimeter of the field to alert to the release of toxic fumes. And for whatever reason, if the amortization process does not go through, because we understand that the city is in financial peril currently, a ballot initiative has been written to stop, phase out drilling and fracking in the Inglewood oil field. And I'm trying to advance the slide, nothing's happening. So let's see if I can get out of here. It's not moving. Let's see. Trying to find the cursor here to get to stop sharing since the slide's not moving. Oh, okay. All right. We got to.
I think it might be slowing things down because we have so many people on.
Oh, okay. As far as homelessness is concerned, again, this is a summary slide. I support the 3-year program proposed by LASA, providing bridge housing, rental subsidies, and rehousing services, leading to permanent placement for 15,000 folks vulnerable to COVID-19 due to their age and health conditions. I'm advancing the slide. It's not happening, so I'm going to go back to. I'm going to stop sharing it so I can get back to the original screen. Okay. It's not happening, so.
I stopped it.
Oh, okay. All right. Can you see me okay now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. At my end, I'm only seeing the slide, so it's a little tricky. All right. In summary, my previous work at Kaiser Permanente as founding chief of neurology has taught me to use best practices methodology towards solving pressing issues of the city. And my work with the Sierra Club West LA has provided me with leadership skills as well as collaborative skills in solving a problem. So I join my fellow residents of the city in celebrating our tradition of liberty and justice today, and thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Khin Khin. Thank you, Khin Khin. Now we've got some questions.
Okay.
And we've been getting them in the chat, and I've got the first one here. The question is, what about the Baldwin Hills Conservancy plans? How does that fit in with a solar/wind farm? Did you get the question?
Yes, yes. I'm only seeing the slides now. I can't see any of you guys, but.
Try. Maybe you're on the, maybe you need to look on your computer and get the Zoom program back to the front of the screen.
Oh, okay. I'm going to get out of the slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, business. Yeah, let me see if I can.
And look for, activate your Zoom. And then you'll be able to see. We can see and hear you fine,
okay.
though. We can see and hear you
I
fine.
get it now. Yeah. All right. The question was, how does
the Baldwin Hills Conservancy plan fit in with the solar wind farm idea for when the oil field is gone?
Yeah, the Park to Playa pathway, as you know, is going to be a continuation from the BHSO, Baldwin Hills Park, near Bill Bott's Field, and that path is circumventing or is at the perimeter of where the oil fields are. So you can still have a coexisting path to Playa all the way to the ocean, and still have your wind and solar farms in the middle of the field next to Blair Hills.
We have another question?
Yes.
Let's see, we've got one here, kind of a long one here. Will you take the money from fossil fuel companies, police unions, or developers, or the Chamber of Commerce whose members include developers and oil gas companies? Anyone else you will not take oh, I'm sorry, this is about campaign contributions that you will accept. Will you take money from? Okay, and the list is fossil fuel companies, police unions, or developers, or the Chamber of Commerce, whose members include developers and oil and gas companies. And will you take money from anyone else or is there anyone else you won't take money, campaign contributions from besides the ones they've asked? It's all complicated.
Thank you for the question. Nobody's offered me any money whatsoever, so I don't anticipate any problems.
Okay, huh? All right. Do we have another question?
Oh, yes.
All right. We owe, this is about social justice. As we transform from systematic racism and create a more equitable Culver City, how and what will you do to factor in sustainability? Please give specifics.
I think that's a very interesting and important intersectionality of sustainability and social justice. I would have to go back to our work, Sierra Club West LA's work with Clean Power Alliance, or CPA. If you look at the prices that the Clean Power Alliance charges right next to Southern California Edison's charges, the prices for 50% renewable energy is much less than what Southern California Edison charges. So right then and there, you're making renewable energy cheaper for folks who want to lead a sustainable life and have a sustainable energy source. So that would be one example of how you can interface and produce a win-win situation for both clean energy and social justice.
Great. Okay, this is about policing. Should police officers be
retrained to deal with people with mental issues and lack of housing?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Should police officers be retrained to so that they know how to deal with people who have mental illnesses, or did you say housing issues?
Yeah.
Housing issues, lack of housing and mental illness. It's a question about whether we should retrain police officers for that kind of work.
I think that if Chief Sid, CCPD's Chief Sid has liberated $982,000 out of his budget voluntarily by not hiring 4 police officers, I think we can put that money to good use and hire 4 additional social service workers to help out to deal with the mental health issues that you just mentioned. The thing about social workers is that it takes a long time to train social workers. That is to say, in addition to the 4-year college, you need a 2-year additional training as graduate students, so that's why they come out with degrees like Master of Social Work at the other end when they come to us. So it's hard to train somebody who's a police person, and then unless they're interested in devoting years to their additional training to deal with mental health issues. So I think that problem can be triage in a slightly different manner that we're doing now, so that if a family of a patient with schizophrenia or deep depression, bipolar disorder, has an issue dealing with their family member, instead of calling 911 or the police department, we should establish a new triaging system where they call our social services, and then we can go from there. But I should also mention that our social service workers, when they are sent to the field, it will be helpful for them to have police escorts, so that if somebody has guns on the other side of the response system, then our social workers can be protected. So we have to protect both the social services specialists who gets called out to the field, and both sides of the situation. So it'll be helpful if we can protect our social workers.
Mute myself, sorry. Sorry, that was my fault. What, the next question is, what would you do to decrease traffic congestion?
I think that Mother Nature has preempted us in that department, in the sense that with the COVID-19 situation as it's currently unfolding, traffic is low volume these days. But that's a very salient question that we talked about in our leadership Culver City class, of which I was a member in its inaugural year, 2018 to 2019. We had the traffic engineer come and talk to us in our class. And what the traffic engineer can do is be there present at the time traffic congestion at the bottleneck, and actually manipulate and control traffic signals so that it will release the bottleneck. So we'll probably need more presence at the keyboard or the computer end for the traffic engineer to mitigate any problems that are present at that time.
Okay, the next question is, what should the city do about the homeless encampments in Culver City or near Culver City?
When I did the homeless count this year and last year, what we found, at least in our little minivan that we were driven around in, was the fact that the majority of the homeless folks in Culver City were in their own cars or in their own campers or in their own vans. The majority. We only found one bicyclist who was pedaling around at night with all his wares in the back of his bike. So if we wanted to address this head on, we should try to meet the needs of the majority of the homeless folks in Culver City by making sure that they have a safe parking place at night. And we can negotiate this with current leaders of a church or any of the establishments that have a huge parking lot in the city, and see if we could provide safe parking for those folks. And then for the remainder of the minority of the homeless folks in Culver City, we can partner with the county and follow through with LASA's program in providing bridge housing, rental subsidies, and rehousing services for the 15,000 in the county. So that would be the recommended plan.
Okay, I've got another one here. This one's labeled economic justice. What should the city do to assist Culver City residents experience hunger, particularly among Culver City school kids?
I understand that we currently have folks making sure that our kids don't go hungry. So I would continue the present plans. Also, when we've closed down the city, the CCPD has closed down schools. Currently, we have school associated law enforcement officers who are on furlough. They can be deployed in a very positive manner in providing, helping to provide meals for kids who are currently experiencing food safety issues, food provision issues.
I think we got time for maybe one more question here. This is again on policing. Would you support a civilian oversight committee of the police?
Absolutely. I think that as the city of LA has done, they have a full-time Citizens Advisory Committee to oversee the work of the police department. And any of us in any business these days has an oversight committee. The physicians have an oversight committee, i.e. the Medical Board of California. The lawyers have theirs. If you think of any profession there is operating in any city or state, we do have oversight committees. So I think it's high time for the CCPD or any police department to have an oversight committee reviewing their record and performance.
Well, is there anything in the last 2 minutes you'd like to add? I'm going to not ask any more questions at the moment, but we've got, it's 11:28 and we have our next candidate coming up in 2 minutes.
2 minutes, I see. Let me see if I can, I don't want to go back to the slides because we had so much problems with them. But I just wanted to say that it's an honor to be part of this inaugural candidates forum in this format. So again, I'd like to thank the board of the Culver City Democratic Club for making this possible. And I do see that we have 55 participants. So that's more than what we usually have at our July 4th barbecue. So I thank you all for joining us and spending some time with us. And please join me in working towards a more equitable and just Culver City by November 3rd. So thank you again for your attention, and please enjoy the rest of your 4th of July. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khin Khin. And I'm going to let in the next candidate, and I thank you for your time.
Okay.
And we'll put the video out so that everybody can see all the candidates.
All right, I'm going to leave so that you
Okay.
can have your privacy here.
Okay, our next candidate is Yasmine McMorrin, and Yasmine is coming into our meeting. Hi, Yasmine. Let's see here. Am I muted? No. I'm going to unmute you here.
Okay.
Oops.
We're here, but
There you are. I'm sorry, I didn't unmute you. We're at the bottom. Hi, Yasmine. This is Yasmine McMorrin. And she's also a club member. Everybody who's speaking here today is welcome. And take it away.
all right. Thank you so much, Pete. We're having some technical difficulties. I'm so glad we got it worked out. So good morning, Culver City Democrats. Thank you so much for having me at this virtual gathering. Although I truly wish it could have been in person. I hope you each and your families are safe and well. I wish you all a very happy 4th of July. I'm so grateful to celebrate this nation's founding with you. Although I would be remiss not to point out that it is a complicated day for Black, Indigenous, folks of color in our nation. Because in 1776, when Congress declared that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I know many of you know this, but many of them owned human beings, not at all considering them equal and certainly without rights. So I always want to, just honor and hold space for that, because it is a tension, right? It's a tension that our nation was founded on, and I believe it's the same tension that is the undercurrent of today's, our 2020 demands that Black Lives Matter or abolish ICE, right? There's something happening in our nation and in our city, and for folks who maybe were unaware, excuse me, are now being brought up to speed that there is disparate treatment. And much of that is unfortunately based on race. And it's uncomfortable to discuss for some. And it really goes against sort of our American ethos that we all have the same chance for success. And if we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, we will all reach the American dream. Many folks are unfortunately without boots, let alone straps. But it is our truth, right? And it's our country that we love. And I believe that it's our work to ensure that all men and women are equal and may pursue a full life and have liberty and have all the happiness that their hearts can hold. So I'm going to transition from that to share just a little bit more about me. I always say, I'm Talbert and Dolores's daughter, right? Those are my parents. And I'm not here but for their sacrifices and love. My late father, he passed last year, unfortunately, but he was a Jamaican immigrant who later became a Newark police officer and detective for almost 30 years. And my mother, Dolores, who much to my chagrin, I very much turned into, which is a testament to her grace and prayers. I am Khalida and Latif's little sister. That's my brother and sister. And my late sister was my fiercest advocate, maybe a close second to my dad. And my brother, Latif, always keeps me on my toes to this day. My most important role is a mother. I am now the mother of a 12-year-old. You guys, I can't believe it. I don't know where the time has gone. She's officially a preteen, so please send help and resources, tools, whatever you got. But being Madison's mom sort of really led me onto my legal career, led me to equity work. She is really a light, and it's my deep honor to parent her. She's over here doing a little dance. She's talking about her. For work, I serve as interim dean of students and director of diversity, equity, and inclusion at USC Gould School of Law, where I work to support students in their law school journey while advancing, DEI and overall student wellness. So sort of whatever comes up has to do with students and diversity. So you guys can imagine, given the climate, it's a lot going on and it's quite busy, but I'm very honored to be there. So my journey to this moment is a collective testament to my friends, my family, my community support. I went to undergrad at the #1 HBCU, Spelman College. I had my daughter, Madison, during that time, so I had her really young. I served as an education consultant in Hyderabad, India after work, or after undergrad, working in their equivalent of our charter schools for about 9 months. I came back to the States after that to attend law school at Rutgers School of Law. I did a clerkship with a criminal judge after law school, and I practiced for a little bit, but I didn't truly enjoy it. I was sort of meeting people at the, I don't want to say the end, but sort of when folks are involved in the criminal justice system, it's not too late, but I really wanted to dedicate my work and my life to sort of education and sort of hopefully in some prevention with some of that work. So I decided to intentionally pivot and pursue a career more in the ed space and the policy space. So I decided to move where I knew exactly 3 people at the time. I had 1 cousin living out here and 2 best friends from college. But it was the best decision I ever made. I always say I literally walk by faith and not by sight. And something told me, hey, you know, you love Los Angeles, try it. And I'm so grateful that I had the fortitude to try it and to make this shift. So since coming out here and sort of deciding to work on equity work, I've been dedicated to, you know, creating more opportunities for everyone to thrive, not just for me, not just for my daughter, but for all of us. So that's sort of my background. So I'm going to transition over sort of into sort of issues just as a candidate. So I don't know if many of you guys know, but we did have and I hope, Pete, just let me know if I'm running long because I'm talking a lot. So so we had our launch in November, and I'm so grateful I did because, you know, all of this COVID stuff is happening and we're all doing our best to stay safe and well and safer at home and working remotely, et cetera. So we were able to kick off in November, and I'm grateful that I was able to share that time with you, or if you were in attendance. But during that time, like a lot of my focus, my pre-COVID issues were really like mobility and accessibility, transportation, active transportation, concerned about the environment, you know, ensuring that the Inglewood oil field is closed, and like we're continuing to make steps towards sustainability and our environmental choices. And of course, in housing and homelessness, right? Because those two go hand in hand, ensuring that we're on the path to creating more affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera. And not that those things are still, you know, not important, because they definitely are, and they definitely are still relevant to this 2020 landscape that we're in. But they sort of shifted, right? So now shifting into sort of this COVID world and navigating this new reality, this new normal, especially in light of the uprisings and just everything that's been going on. My issues have shifted a little bit. And so they're really community well-being, and that includes sort of reimagining safety, reimagining policing, ensuring that our businesses, especially our small businesses, are able to thrive and continue during this climate. And as well as, you know, accessibility and mobility, right? We want to be able to traverse and get through our city and be able to do so in a well manner. As well as health, right? Community health. As we've learned more than ever, you know, housing is public health. If you don't have a place to shelter and home, you won't be safe, you won't be all right. We want to make sure that we're continuing to have, you know, safe openings, and we're doing whatever we can to make sure to sort of slow the spread. And make sure that folks are well. We're doing some closed streets downtown, making sure that we have safe streets, and we're able to do hopefully more of those in other areas. And of course, the environment, right? We don't have a healthy community if we don't have a healthy environment. So again, you know, with the oil fields and other sustainable issues, we want to make sure that we keep those to the forefront as well. And the last one, or the last sort of umbrella, is of course diversity, equity, inclusion. I mean, we're moving, what I hope to do is to move from this moment and sort of everything in these conversations and how we're wrestling with these topics, we move from this moment to policy and really institutionalize some of these concerns and some of these remedies that we'll hopefully get to as we are acknowledging that Black Lives Matter, and we're acknowledging sort of this disparate treatment. And hopefully we also acknowledge our past, right? That's come up a lot at city council meetings. You know, Culver City was a sundown town, right? And what does that mean when there was restrictive covenants and, you know, folks of color, Black folks could not buy homes here? What does that mean for us in 2020? How does that show up in how, you know, the rates of ownership between white folks and folks of color, and the rates of renters, and how most renters are folks of color? How do those two things meet? And I hope we really move, I hope this moment really teaches us that the status quo has to change, right? It's not serving everyone. And so I hope that collectively we can work and come together, right, to demand that it does, right? Demand that everyone in Culver City, everyone who lives, works, and plays here can feel safe here, can thrive here. And that's my hope, right? So again, I've been talking for a long time. I'm sorry, I'm an attorney. I tend to run long. So I want to wrap it up in two ways. So I want to recognize just, I would be the second Black person on our council and the first Black woman to serve. And so I thought it was appropriate today to wear the California Black Women's Democratic Club shirt to highlight that I'm standing on the shoulders of some dynamic Black women leaders like Kamala Harris, like our state senator, hopefully our next supervisor, Holly Mitchell, Barbara Lee, Maxine Waters, Shirley Weber. I just want to honor them and be grateful just to even have the ability to run. It's really an honor. And my Spelman sister, Marian Wright Edelman, the founder of the Children's Defense Fund, she put out like a newsletter today and it really resonated with me. So I wanted to share it with you guys. And she says, the vision is for a just, compassionate, multiracial, joyful society that cares for children, elders, itself, and the rest of the world, and the needs of the earth, right? And I was like, oh, like what a wonderful statement. Like nothing really encapsulates, this moment and sort of what I envision for my community, for my daughter, and for all of us. So these are my hopes, and this is where I am. This is a little about who I am, and I really appreciate you allowing me to share space with you, and I'm honored for this opportunity to run for Culver City Council, and I'm ready for your questions now.
Great. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I just unmuted myself. I'm going to ask you the first question, and it's about rent control. What's your position on the ballot measure? Is this a question about the local? Oh, this is the local Culver City ballot measure that would require a referendum before rent control could be established, and it would be retroactive to before the council instituted the temporary rent control.
I'm sorry, my daughter's.
The local rent control, anti-rent control issue, as I would characterize it, but it says that you would have to have a referendum of Culver City voters before rent control.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'm sorry. Yeah. She just was having the worst timing, but that sometimes happens in this Zoom atmosphere.
So the question is just what's your position?
I've been speaking out in favor of making our rental protections permanent. If folks have been in our council meetings, and so I am against this referendum. I think that we elect our city council members to make the decisions, right? And so it seems very interesting that there's this movement to sort of, be able to sort of raise the rent more than 3% and evict whenever we want. I mean, to just be honest, there were very little protections for renters. My daughter and I were renters up until really last month. We were sort of forced into becoming homeowners here. Grateful for my parents' support, because becoming a homeowner in Culver City in 2020 is a very privileged, thing to do. It's lots of money for a down payment, even for a condo in which we live right now. And I think that renters deserve support. And I don't think that for every, little thing, there should be a referendum for that. I don't know, it's very strange to me. And I think just the racial, again, I alluded to this earlier, but the racial sort of disparity in that, 1/3 of homeowners in Culver City are folks of color, or 2/3 are white, whereas it sort of flips opposite when you look at who's renters, what the demographics of who our renters are. And it feels horrible to have unsecure housing, to know that your house is getting ready to be sold and not really sure, what's going to be happening, or, you know, your rent might go up and you can't afford that and you can't absorb that. And a lot of our diversity that we tout, and you know, when it comes to our schools and our community, is really in large part because of our renter community. And I really think we should support our renters. And, you know, that doesn't mean that we don't want to, you know, our housing providers, our landlords, that doesn't mean that we don't want folks to be able to make a profit, but we want it to be fair. We want there to be sort of parameters and for there to be protections for renters, because they're a part of our community too, almost 50%. So sorry, that was long-winded, but hopefully that answered the question.
That's good. Okay. Campaign finance reform. Will you take money from fossil fuel companies, police unions, or developers, or the Chamber of Commerce, whose members include developers and oil and gas companies? And the follow-up to that is, anyone else you will not take campaign contributions from, if the answer is no on the first one?
Yeah, it's funny. I think our campaign team is just discussing this, I think just this week. So I think this has gone up on our website, but no, we won't be accepting money from those groups. I don't know if we've identified anyone else yet, but I kind of struggle with that too, because it's like, you know, if you accept money, it sort of implies that, you know, you'll be beholden to them. I mean, I'd like this whole system to be sort of overhauled. I hate that we have to sort of like beg for money, and it makes it, you know, kind of, you know, a deterrent for folks to run, folks like me, folks of color. I'm a single parent, you know, the money that you have to raise to really be competitive. So in long short, no, I won't be accepting money from those groups, but I think the way we do this whole process and how, you know, the barriers are just so high for people who, for regular people to serve and represent us. So.
There's a question here about the general plan. What are your primary accomplishments as a member of the General Plan Advisory Committee?
Yeah, well, the general plan is sort of just getting started. I mean, we had a big break because of the COVID. We had just had our addition, and I'm vice chair of the general plan. I didn't share that in my spiel, so my apologies for that. So thank you for the question. But we're really, we're still hearing from our community members, and just as a leader, just in general, it's so important to sort of get the pulse on the community and what folks want and how folks are feeling, and considering everything that's been happening in terms of sort of the uprisings and the protests, and sort of listening to our youth. I mean, policing and figuring out, you know, safety and reimagining that was top of mind. Equity was pretty much all we discussed at our last meeting on Tuesday. So I would say maybe if you'd asked me last year, it would have been different and more housing based, which is still important. It's just funny because all these things are layered, right? You can't really, you know, be all about equity and not about housing, or about the environment, or about policing, right? I know people, you know, professionals of color who will not, especially men, who will not drive on Culver City. They will intentionally drive around it because of, you know, just not wanting to have a negative experience with our police department. And these are not, you know, bad people. So, so I think we're on a good track. I'm dealing with equity and having it be top of mind, and I'm hopeful that we can make some headway in that. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. But I don't know if we have anything to really show for it just yet, because we're still sort of mapping things out, hearing from you guys, hearing from our community members, and figuring out what, you know, where we're going to go and how we're going to prioritize. So this is going to be a years-long process for the GPAC, but we're just getting started. But we'd love to hear and get more public comment and get more folks involved. So please come to meetings so we can hear more from folks.
And here's a question about policing. It's a two-part question. The first part is, would you support a civilian oversight committee of the police? And the other part is, what other steps to transform a police force would you favor to turn a police force into a peace force?
Oh, that's nice, peace force. So I definitely support a civilian oversight board. I think there is going to be something like that, or some task force put together. I hope that a permanent committee or commission comes out of that, because it's important. Accountability is important. Transparency is important. And it's something that I would love to see, you know, be something that our police are saying, like, hey, we want to do this too. We want to be transparent for you. We hear these concerns and we want to be better because we're community members with you guys. So I'm completely on board for that. More accountability, more transparency was just going to continue to create hopefully more trust and better community relations with our police department. And in terms of reform, so reform is funny, right? Because we've had, like, you know, our police have banned chokeholds, and they've done sort of these, you know, they have the cams, and, you know, there's all these like 21st century things that we're doing that really, I don't know, have made us feel any safer or be any safer for folks who are experiencing disparate treatment. So, you know, I know LA has already started to sort of map out how they're going to deal with sort of the unarmed section, or have, you know, a number that they can call where there won't be the option of force. So we'll see how it goes. I know in Oakland, and I shared this at the GPAC meeting on Tuesday, there's like some app that if there are complaints, it streamlines it and then allows for it to be more transparency. Raleigh, North Carolina also has more transparent process for, you know, complaints and accountability for the police force. So I'm really interested in that. I want to see more of that coming out so we can have more accountability and transparency in that process when we're seeing, you know, complaints or sort of negative treatments happening. So, but again, this is a collective process. I don't want to be the person or a leader who is saying this is the only way or this is the right way. I feel like we are very much in community together. So I always want to be accountable to you. So this is a collaborative process. I was really inspired by what the folks were doing up in Oakland in terms of the transparency there and the things that they're doing with their app. But whatever ideas that we as a community have, because we need to feel and be safe, everybody.
Good last question.
Okay, there's one on government spending. What's your position as to whether Culver City should implement a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline per the recommendations of Moss Adams, Culver City's former internal auditor?
Okay, I think don't we already have sort of a reporting line already where you can call and report information or I'm pretty sure there's a line already. I don't know if that's the specific purpose of the call line, but I'm pretty sure the city has something similar to that already. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but definitely we don't want fraud or waste, especially going into, you know, this recession or, you know, dealing with COVID. So I think, you know, looking at our policing budget and just the budget in general and finding places where, and you know, we have a great Onyx Jones and, you know, her team is excellent. So I think that, you know, we're on a good track, but we definitely have to push to see the things that we want to see happen in our city. So, but I do think that there is an existing line. I could be wrong about that, but please let me know if I'm not.
My next question is on the subject of business. What programs should the city introduce or extend to ensure that both the residents and small business remain safe and sustainable through the pandemic and into the future?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, there's a tension, right? We definitely, I mean, the safest place to be is at home. So depending on the kind of business, you know, I've heard at city council meetings, you know, business folks have come up and they're talking about their loss of revenue. And, you know, that's how we've gotten a lot of the outdoor seating. And, you know, it's hard because safety really does come first. So I know, and it's tough because we have limited resources as a city to sort of offer, you know, gaps in and monies, et cetera. So I have to sit a little bit more with this. I don't know if I have, and I'm always super transparent. I'm never afraid to say, let me look more into it. But it's something that I want to see. I want to see safe openings. I want to see our small businesses in particular to thrive and make it through this time. But we want to do it safely. So I'm sitting with this, and I'm trying to figure out how we can do so in partnership with the city and state and the federal. And I'm hopeful that we'll get, more federal assistance soon, but who knows? So I'm sorry that wasn't probably the clearest answer that you were looking for, but please know I'm thinking a lot about it because it's something I care deeply about. And I don't want to lose our small businesses during this time.
Okay. The next question is on social justice. As we transform from a system of racism and create a more equitable Culver City, how and what will you do to factor in sustainability? And please give specifics.
Well, we don't have that much time but I mean, my whole thing is going beyond sentiment to policy, right? Like even at work, like how can we ensure that these systems that we have in place, and really how are we funding? How are we making sure that our budgets are really going to fund and support and provide resources to ensure that there's more equity or that we're providing funding to certain, folks. So I mean, I always say, look at the money and the policies, and we have to be intentional about crafting those things to ensure that we are addressing equity. And so when we talk about equity, that could be anything. That could be how we're treating and including our, our homeless community, how we are, how quickly are we moving on affordable housing, how are we supporting our small businesses, right? I mean, all of that is equity. I always say, I think that sometimes people like to put equity in a cup over here with like race and, but it's in everything. So I think just having that lens and looking at sort of every, policing, looking at housing, looking at our environment, looking at mobility, right? Even we're learning, some people are not safe to traverse around. So I think applying that lens to every decision is really what we need. And just to be honest, right? Like without blame, I know it's difficult to talk about these things, but yeah. So I don't know, I hope that if I could have gone on for a little longer.
Well, we're getting down to time to switch candidates here. So okay. I'll let you say anything you have left to say, and if and I won't ask any more questions.
Okay. But, yeah, it's the last minute. Well, I really appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully wholeheartedly, right? So thank you for your time. Please, if you're interested, you can check out our website. It's votemcmorrin.com. We're on social media under the same handle, Vote McMorrin. So thank you again, and I hope you all are well. And again, have a happy 4th. Thank you so much for having me. Take care, everybody.
Okay, thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, Yasmine.
Of course. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. And our next candidate is Darrel Menthe. And he'll be joining us in a second here. Let me unmute Darrel. Hi, Darrel.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
And this is Darrel Menthe, another member of our club who's running for city council, and I'll just turn it over to him for the first 15 minutes.
Okay. Well, happy 4th of July, everyone. I want to thank the club leadership for arranging this opportunity in these truly unbelievable times. I thought I'd start with a few words of introduction for those who don't know me yet, and then talk briefly about policy, and then I guess it'll be question time. I'm a lawyer working in downtown Culver City. I've lived here for 14 years. My spouse, Sarah, is also a lawyer. She works for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We got 2 children, both born here. Vivian's in 7th grade and James is in 4th grade. They go to Culver City schools. I'm probably best known around town as the president of the Downtown Business Association. I'm also the vice chair of the Finance Advisory Committee. Of course, you can go to my website if you want more details about biography. It's all there. I'm proud to say that I've been a Democrat my whole adult life, since I volunteered on my first campaign when I was 14. And now, more than ever, Democrats need to pull together. You know, Donald Trump has no respect for our democratic institutions. And I think the best response we can make to Trumpism is good, competent local government that restores people's trust in democratic institutions. That's the work we do right here. You know, this is a consequential election for our city. I guess that gets said every year, but this year I think we can really say this is an incredibly consequential election. We have such big decisions we have to make. You know, we have budget cuts to deal with, probably the worst economic situation in our lifetimes. We still have to deal with the issue of homelessness. Our unhoused neighbors did not just go away because we don't see them so much when we were in quarantine. We have to reinvent public safety from the ground up, really, to protect and serve all the people of Culver City. We need to work on transit mobility options. We need to work on rent control and affordable housing. You know, housing is crucial to our future. It's crucial to why I'm running. Every city wants three things. You know, we want to be small, affordable, and desirable. But you can't all have all three. We have to pick two. You know, we could just be small and affordable, but not desirable. That's probably the easiest one of all. All we'd have to do is just shut down the fire department and stop providing city services. We can also be small and desirable, but not affordable. And that's the path we're on right now. And that frightens me. If I'm in this race for any reason, it's because of that. What I really want to see, is my speaker working? Yes? Okay.
I can hear you.
All right, so my computer just flashed up that's fine. Anyway, back to where I was. You know, I don't want to be the Palisades. I don't want our city to turn into, you know, La Cañada Flint Ridge. And that's what happens if we become small and desirable, but not affordable. Our future, what we really need to do is to be affordable and desirable. To do that, we're going to have to grow a little. We have to be ready for that. You know, every city back east, Baltimore, I don't know, Charlotte, Philadelphia, you see ground level retail and office space and 3 to 4 stories of apartments above it. We look down Culver City, we see low slung 1 and 2 story buildings in our commercial districts, and nobody lives there. Well, we can turn these into urban villages with walkable, bikeable neighborhoods everywhere. It's a big project. It's part of, I think, our general plan should do, but we do this, we can start to build the affordable housing that we know we need. And affordable housing is everything. That's what equity means, so that people can live here. That's inclusion. That's how we fight climate change. That's one of the most important things we need to do. We also need to look on routing traffic around Culver City rather than just through it. You know, we need to work on equity and justice. That means taking care of all the communities that have been left out of Culver City over the years, and including communities that we don't always notice, like the Muslim community, which is quite large here. This is about resource allocation and inclusion altogether. I also want to have a target for our cultural budget, a grand target of 1% of our city budget. That would actually be quite a lot. Also, we need to work to end the drilling in the Inglewood oil field. You know, if the COVID-19 quarantine teaches us anything, it's that disasters really happen. You know, when people predict these things about climate change, most people want to deny that it's going to happen. It is going to happen. It could well happen in a few years. We need to do our part now to stop fossil fuel production, and the future will judge us harshly, I think, if we don't. You know, finally, I guess I'm getting through my prepared remarks. You know, if I'm elected, I will do my best to be a good servant to the people of Culver City. I believe I'm ready, and I hope I can persuade all of you that I'll be worthy of your support, not only as voters, but as fellow Democrats. So, thank you.
Thanks, Darrel. So I'll give you the first question that I've gotten in the chat so far.
Okay.
And this is about campaign finance. Will you take money from fossil fuel companies, police unions, or developers, or the Chamber of Commerce, whose members include developers and oil and gas companies? And the second part of the question, is there anyone else or any groups that I didn't mention that you won't take contributions from?
Well, I absolutely will not take contributions from any of those groups, not from the police unions, not from developers. That's actually important. When I say I'm in favor of housing, it's very important that I tell you I'm not going to take money from developers, because that's not my purpose.
The other one was the
fossil fuel companies. I don't know if I'll get much opportunity to get money from fossil fuel companies, but I certainly won't take that. I doubt the Chamber of Commerce is going to throw money my way, but I would not take it from the Chamber. And that's not because of any hostility to members of the Chamber. I am in fact a member of the Chamber, as are most small businesses here. But I believe the money should be raised from people directly as much as possible.
The next question I have is about rent control. There's a ballot initiative just on the Culver City ballot in November, which it would retroactively undo the temporary rent control we have now, and it would require a referendum of the Culver City voters to have rent control. Are you for or against that, is the question.
Oh, I'm against that proposition. There's a whole number of reasons to be against that proposition. The first is it would repeal the rent control we have, and we need to have local rent control. We need to have local rent control because AB 1482 does a lot of good things, but it's not tailored to our needs, and we need to make sure that we can tailor it to our needs. And of course, that leads into the second reason why I oppose this. We shouldn't be making complicated policy at ballot box propositions. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work for us when we're governing. The City Council right now has the opportunity to take a rent control measure and tweak it and adjust it and make sure that it works for us. One of the things I think we ought to consider is an appointed or elected rent control board that can dynamically set rates and deal with requests for exemptions and other things on an ongoing basis. You lose all that opportunity if you just have a one-size-fits-all law that gets paid in the ballot box. So, no, I'm definitely against that proposition.
Okay, what's your position on policing?
Okay.
This is a two-part question. Would you support a civilian oversight committee of the police? And the second part is just what other steps to transform a police force into a peace force would you take?
Okay, well, the first one's easy, yes. It's one of my surprises that we don't have that already. But yes, we definitely need that. There are two important truths that we need to confront when it comes to policing. The first is that our traditional policing methods are not acceptable because far too many Black people and other people of color get killed, period. When we say Black Lives Matter, it started as a response that said we can't have a set of policies that simply devalues the lives of Black people, and so many get taken as part of our law enforcement. The other thing we have to recognize is that people of color have a very different experience of law enforcement than most white folks do. Most white people I know feel protected and they like their police here, and that is not something that people of color necessarily feel. Many do not. And we need to acknowledge these facts, not go around them. We need to face up to them, and that means we need to do some big changes. Now, I think we need to sort of recreate a Department of Public Safety, and this is going to take a lot of work. It's going to take some time. We need to get real experts who know what they're doing about how to change our police tactics. The use of force stuff was easy to do. I mean, I say easy to do. We know how to stop some of the use of force policies. I took the Citizens Police Academy a couple of years ago, which I highly recommend. It's lots of fun. But one of the things that I learned was that our Culver City Police had a lot of fairly retrograde policies in action. I was very surprised by that. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I ran for council was to work on change for that. And for example, the chokehold was certainly legal in 2018 when I took the Citizens Police Academy, because that's what they told me. Freddy was actually in the course with me, so I think you'll remember that as well. As far as specific steps that we can do, citizens oversight is important. We also need to invest in a mental health core. You know, one of the things that makes life difficult for us in Culver City is that most of our social spending is not done through the city, it's done through the county. So for us to develop new expertise is going to take time, it's going to take work, but we have to do it. We have to do it because we need to have non-lethal, non-armed responses available. And that's going to take quite some time to set up, and it'll probably take an investment of resources. Thank you.
Do you support closing streets in downtown Culver City?
I do. I've been a major proponent of that proposal. I've been working as the president of the Downtown Business Association directly with members of staff to get that done. It's been an amazing process. We went in 4 weeks from our proposals to the city adopting those proposals. You know, in government years, that's like a nanosecond. It was incredible. I do support it. I know there's going to be some adjustments. Anytime you take public right-of-way space away from cars, you're going to end up with some people who are not happy with the results. You just can't put everybody in the same space. But I think the result of this is going to be tremendous. We're going to end up with something like a grand piazza for Culver City, which I know many people have dreamed about for some time. And I hope that we can do this here. I also hope that in other neighborhoods, not just the downtown, we can really work on having these walkable, bikeable, scooterable spaces.
The next question I have is on the Inglewood oil field.
Yes.
How should the city keep our residents safe from the Inglewood oil field?
Well, the best thing we can do is to try to shut down the drilling there. As far as keeping our residents safe, all I think we can do is to lobby with the state and with the county and with every institution we can to eliminate fracking. I know that's been an issue. I don't know what else we can do other than that, other than to try to shut it down. I don't think there are any other measures that will really help.
Okay, next question is on government spending. What is your position as to whether Culver City should implement a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline per the recommendations of Moss Adams, Culver City's former internal auditor?
You know, on the Finance Advisory Committee, where I serve as the vice chair, we have spent quite a bit of time going over the Moss Adams report, getting reports from Moss Adams about this particular issue. I certainly support a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline as it's been outlined. The actual details of that may differ somewhat from Moss Adams' suggestions. That's fine. I know we're starting with a pilot program, moving into it. I think it's probably more important to have anonymous email capacity, because you know the 1-800 number is not what most people use these days. They want to send off an email. We also have to be a little bit cautious. Very often what happens in a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline are complaints about policy. People just don't like how the money's being spent rather than actual fraud and abuse. But I want to thank you for that question. That's an issue that I've heard an awful lot about in our committee work.
Okay, here's a two-part question. The first part I'll ask first, without giving you both sides here. The first question is, should police officers be retrained to deal with the mentally ill and those who lack housing?
Should police officers be retrained? I think there needs to be some retraining of police officers. I don't think that's the ultimate solution here. We're going to need probably other individuals as part of a mental health corps, part of a homeless outreach corps who can do these things. So I don't think it's really a matter of taking our existing police force and just retraining them, but certainly some additional training for our existing police force is going to be important, because no matter what we do, our police officers will be encountering our unhoused neighbors and dealing with mental illness issues. That's unavoidable. And so we need to make sure that that can be done in a non-lethal manner and that all the resources are given to these officers who can do it. So that's part one. What's part two?
Well, part two is from a different questioner. And if it were to be the decision of the city to retrain police officers, would it be practical for them to put down their guns so as not to intimidate people?
You know, I was in London for the millennium, and it was an amazing experience. And at 2 a.m, we're all trying to get back home, and we're at the tube stop at Victoria Station. And there were probably 3 million people downtown. That was actually the estimate. And there were hundreds of thousands trying to get into this tube stop. And there was one guy, one officer, unarmed, who stood there and held the crowd at bay. Now, it was a very diverse crowd. This is not something that happened just because they were English. There are known methods of training that we have that can empower unarmed police to do a lot of important things. Now, unfortunately, unlike the United Kingdom, we have a lot of guns in this country. So I think that I would not tell the police that it's impossible to use their weapons and they always have to be unarmed. I do think we need to look carefully into training for more unarmed situations, because right now the default is simply to always be armed. In fact, I think that default is done without question, without even thinking about it. And we need to, if we empower our police with knowledge and training about how to use tactics in whether it's crowd control or other situations where they don't come in with lethal force, I think that we can really reduce the incidence of it. So I want to thank you for that question.
Now, this is another one on traffic congestion, and I think you may have referred just for a second to this, but what the question is, other than downtown street closures, which you have said you're in favor of, what other mobility and safe transit options do you support and envision for Culver City?
I think the best future for Culver City are to establish dedicated bus, bike mobility lanes. That's a very good use of public space, and it allows non-automobile transportation to go forward. I would also like to, I'm very much in favor of the Slow Streets program. Now, Slow Streets needs buy-in from the people who live on those streets, and that's going to be a process, but I think it's an important process. And I think as we get through this process of having streets decide to be slow streets, creating these dedicated bus and mobility lanes, one of the things that we'll discover is that we are starting to overcome a problem we can otherwise never overcome, which is there's simply not enough space on the ground in West Los Angeles for all the cars that we wish we could drive. And the only way we're going to get past this is by investing in new forms of transportation. And I should say, it's not a matter of first you make it hard to drive, then you build the new transportation. You've got to build the new transportation first to give people the options. We also have to remember that there are people, for example, the disabled community and the elderly community, who are going to need to use van and car transportation. We can't simply get rid of it. But by building, say, dedicated bus lanes, bike lanes, they're sharing a lane. That's actually important. Connecting a network throughout the city to the Expo line, to the new Crenshaw line. Those things will help transform our future.
Okay, the next one is on utilities, specifically on internet access. Why does Culver City limit the number of internet companies allowed to operate? What can we do to improve internet service?
You know, most communities limit the internet access because somebody has to take care of the wiring, the hardware. And so there's a trade-off. If you install the higher hardware, then you have a certain monopoly that gets put in place. I think that we can try to break that up. I also think that we need to take a look at the optic fiber system that we've built for the business community, which is actually not that widely available even for the business community. and find ways to open that up to the public. I think that's going to be a long-term process, but it's actually really important because one of the things that we're discovering right now is that technology, the internet, is not just something that we can enjoy. It is absolutely essential for public involvement, inclusion, engagement, even for our children in school. So I'm not sure about everything we can do, but the answer is we do what we can.
Okay, this is on the question of business. What programs should the city introduce or extend to ensure that both the residents and small businesses remain safe and sustainable through pandemic and into the future?
Well, the first thing we need to do is to deal with our current situation of the pandemic. And both residents and businesses are dealing with a crisis of paying rent and with the threat of eviction. One of the things I'm very proud of our city for doing is for putting in a moratorium on evictions for the duration of the emergency, and also for giving individuals and businesses a full 12 months after the end of the emergency to repay back rent. Now, part of that may be just persuading landlords that they may not see all that rent, because we're in a difficult situation. Renters and tenants, commercial tenants, will never make back the money that they lost by being unemployed or not having an open business. But landlords are expecting to be paid in full, as if the COVID-19 never happened. And the only way to handle that is by delaying the repayment. As far as other things that we can do in case of pandemic, these are few and hard, not that many we can do. We have to work with the state, we have to work with the county, we have to find out what can be done, and because we don't really have the funds as a city to pay for the rent for everybody. We also need to work on relief for landlords. One of the things that I think is overlooked when we talk about the closure of downtown, closure of certain streets in the downtown Culver City area, let me say, is that by allowing commercial tenants the ability to operate their businesses and pay rent, we actually are helping the landlords get paid. And we need to look at all these programs holistically. And I will look at and probably embrace all kinds of programs as we see them, to try to help everybody keep going, because what kills is austerity. That's what we need to realize. That we've seen that in the last recession. We see it now. If we pull back, if everybody makes economic decisions to stop spending money, that's when our economy starts to spiral down, and then we start to lose the individuals and the businesses that have made Culver City so special. We need to do everything we can to invest in the human beings and the small businesses that are here right now that make our community. Okay.
Okay, this one is about homeless encampments, and it's just, what should the city do to clear homeless encampments?
That is a tough question. I've known that's going to be one of the toughest questions of the campaign. Let me start by saying this. You know, there are so many emotions that people have when they deal with homelessness. There was a family situation I had to deal with many years ago, and I asked a woman that I trusted for advice, and she told me advice I've never forgotten. She said, "I can't tell you what to do, but whatever you do, act out of love." Now, I say that because we need to have our values and our hearts in the right place. If we act out of fear or anger or hate or frustration, we will never make the right policies. If we start from the right place, if we start from that place of respecting the equal dignity of every single human being, then we can ultimately put a policy together that works. It's going to be a long-term policy, because the homeless is not a monolithic group. There are many different people who are unhoused for many different reasons. The stereotype that we see of a mentally ill or substance abuse using person, those are simply the most visible people, the ones who not necessarily by any means the bulk of the people. As far as clearing the encampments, I wouldn't even use that phrase. I know we would like to see the encampments gone. I hope that we want to see them gone because we want the people in them to be housed and safe, not because we find them difficult to look at. And right now, the state has had a very good policy of, I think it's called Operation Room Key, of trying to get unused hotel rooms for homeless individuals. We need to look at policies like this. We also need to make sure that Culver City is doing its share, but not more than its share. That is to say, we have about 1% of the population of like the 4 million folks in Los Angeles. There's about 40,000 here. We cannot take care of every homeless person in the greater Los Angeles area, but we have a few hundred people that we must take care of, and that's going to take some resources. But there's no easy fix to it, and we certainly can't send the police in to arrest people.
Sorry, I was muted. The next one involves, well, this headed social justice, and I'll just read the question. As we transform from systemic racism and create a more equitable Culver City, how and what will you do to factor in sustainability? And it says, please give specifics.
When I think of sustainability and overcoming systemic racism, I immediately think of the housing and the housing affordability crisis. You know, one of the long-term effects of systemic racism on Culver City was the creation initially of a whites-only sundown town, and then patterns of residential development that have favored not just single family, but single family white home ownership. So when we talk about sustainability, the reason sustainability matters is that people of color, people who have disadvantages, are driving long distances and polluting to go to work. When we can have people who can afford to live where they work, that solves both a problem of systemic racism and a problem of increasing sustainability of our city. I think that's the most important thing we can do.
Just time check here. We're 2 minutes away from the end of this half hour. And so I'll ask this question. What do you think of electric buses?
I'm hoping that's our future. I know that the city invested heavily many years ago in natural gas buses, and there's a big cost that will have to be undertaken in order to transition to electric buses. Given the budget cuts that we're going to have to face and the budget difficulties, we have to plan that out. I believe right now they have a 10-year transition plan. I'd like to see that speeded up. But we're going to need to look carefully where the money comes from. And I know the city is going to need some additional revenue. I worked for quite some time on the Finance Advisory Committee to put together a new revenue source for the city, which is a revised business license tax that does two things. It's much more progressive, so the business license tax is paid by the larger businesses that have just come here. It also exempts most of the small businesses from much of the tax, and it raises $10 to $12 million of additional revenue per year for the city. I know that our chief financial officer and others in the city have looked at this, and this will be probably part of our future. And that's one of the ways we can help afford electric buses in the future. I saw your hand up. You're done with time.
Thank you, Darrell.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for spending this time with us. And we'll go on to the next candidate,
Happy
who will
4th of July,
be
everybody. I will leave.
Freddy Puza.
Oh, I admitted him.
I just did. I'm looking for Darrel Menthe. I think Darrell left. Okay. And I will unmute Freddy.
Great.
Hi, Freddy.
Hello. Hi, Pete. How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
So you get 15 minutes. This is Freddy Puza, running for mayor, a member of our club, running for city council, I should say. I'm sorry.
Yep.
And take it away, Freddy.
Yeah, well, first I want to say thank you, Pete, and to all the executive boards, Cynthia, Gianna, Shannon, Diane, and John for hosting this. I think it's really exciting. Thank you to everyone who attended today. I know this is a long session, but I know we're Democrats and we care about what's going on in our city. So I really thank you all for attending today and listening to what all the candidates have to say. And I'm glad you're here to hear what I have to say as well, and to think about what's going on in our city. I first want to talk about a little bit about my background. I know many of you know me, but you might not know intimate details about me. So I'd like to share that, and then we can get into Q&A. Does that work, Pete? Great. Great. Well, yeah, my name is Freddy Puza. I first moved to Fox Hills in Culver City in 2011. I was drawn to the vibrant growth of the city, the location. It's only 4 miles from where I work at Loyola Marymount University. There's great restaurants. I love the parks. I love that Culver City has the biggest share of the creative economy in the city. That's really important to me as we look to the future and we go through COVID-19 to really think about all these, all of the creative economy businesses and how to support them. And I was attracted to the people. I've met and become friends with people who are kind, smart, and who care about their city. And I feel like, you know, I'm very civically engaged as well, so it's nice to meet like-minded people. So I work at Loyola Marymount University. I do community relations, and so that means I work with neighbors and local businesses and local government on strategic initiatives for the university. I also create goodwill in the community as part of my job. I've been there for 15 years. I also received my master's degree from LMU, and it's just something that I really identify, especially with the mission of the university, which is based on social justice and caring for those on the margins of society. In addition to my primary functions at work, I've been able to do a lot of other things at work, which really is career satisfying. I helped co-found the LMU chapter of the Alliance of White Anti-Racists Everywhere. And so this is a space for white faculty and staff to get together to talk about race and privilege. Sometimes people think that it's people of color's responsibility to teach white people about racism. And so we create a space for white people to talk to other white people about that. And as we unlearn racism and the impacts of white privilege, we don't want to have any undue trauma for people of color who, you know, during this process, because we're going to make mistakes during this process. And so that's the purpose of that group. I also co-chaired the LGBTQ faculty and staff network. Before there was marriage equality, I worked really hard to help make sure that there were, back when, domestic partnerships for same-sex partners. So to help that, make sure that was implemented at LMU. And I was a staff Senate president. So basically I led 40 senators to represent the needs of staff, over 1,500 staff at the university. And finally, I'm an implicit bias instructor for students and for staff at LMU. This is a really important to be aware of how our minds work and how bias works, and how to become aware of my own personal biases and blind spots. Especially this is so important when it comes to decision making. I love to be involved in the community. In Culver City, I'm fortunate to be a member of the Fox Hills Neighborhood Association. I took leadership Culver City. I did the Civilians Police Academy and did ride-alongs. I know that another person running, Darrel, also we were in the same cohort together. I've worked with the Culver City Action Network, the Community Coalition. I served on the Committee on Homelessness, and also I'm a member of the General Plan Advisory Committee. I love to be involved. One of the things that really formed my political consciousness was one of two things. First, I heard growing up that there would never be a Black president. And secondly, I heard that marriage equality would never be a thing. And I volunteered for both of those campaigns in different ways. And so when Obama won, it was so historic and symbolic and amazing, but it was at the same time, it was such a defeat because Prop 8 passed at that time. As we know that, you know, as history tells us, marriage equality eventually became the law of the land, but the lesson that I took away with that is so many times I hear, I think that can't be done, or that's never gonna be a possibility, so don't waste your time. And so I've learned, no, I just don't buy that. So that really formed a lot of how I think about things. And let's see, I think well, and then getting to why I want to run, the last thing, and then I'd love to go into Q&A. It's no secret or shock that I feel like Culver City is really at a divide right now over issues of policing, housing, the budget, so many things. And so, and you know, the city has made a lot of progress in the past few years, and I'm really running to continue on that. And I think I have the skill set to really help us get through this critical time, given all of this that's going on, especially with COVID-19, and who knows where that's going to go now. And the kind of the ways that I see that as are that I'm a listener, but I'm also able to take action. And the second is that I'm a community developer. I love to bring people together around an issue and create space to talk about that and actually, you know, move people to action. And then lastly, I look through things through a lens of equity and inclusion. So that's kind of like where I'm at with it and why I'm running, and I'm ready to, let's get into some questions.
All right. I've got one here on campaign finance. And the question is, we take money from fossil fuel companies, police unions, or developers, or the Chamber of Commerce, whose members include developers and oil and gas companies. And there's, if you have any other groups that you wouldn't take campaign contributions from, would you mention them?
Yeah, that's a no to all of those. And possibly if they were ever to approach, no tobacco companies as well.
Okay. This one is on rent control. What's your position on the ballot measure to repeal interim rent control ordinance and require this is just the Culver City ballot measure, the one that would require a referendum of Culver City voters in order to put through any rent control, and it's retroactive to before our rent control that we have now that is temporary was enacted.
Right, yeah, I'm 100% against that referendum and that ballot measure. I think it'd be devastating right now. I'm for fair and equitable solutions for all of our residents. Right now with COVID-19 especially, we need to focus on prevention on all levels. So, you know, I'm in support of renter protections. More than, you know, about 48% of our total population are renters, and about 25% of those are severely rent burdened. So in the past, you know, since 2011, rents have increased 41%. That's about 4.2%. So per year. So you can see how, you know, this is what kind of effect that can have on our severely rent burden population in our city. Rent protections, you know, also so important right now. We need to keep people in their homes, to stay in their homes, and we're going to see, you know, mass unemployment is going to be on the rise. So renter protections, we need them. They stabilize rents and will prevent thousands of people from possibly falling into homelessness or being displaced. They provide community stability, which is proven to reduce crime. The more stable a community is, it can also help our local economy through having more disposable income. So the more money you have in your pockets, the more you're going to spend that in the local community. I also want to add that this is an equity issue as well. Opportunities to generate wealth are wrapped up in race. And so historically, white families have been able to buy property and pass down wealth through their families and through the generations, where people of color, especially African Americans, have been prevented from that with issues like redlining, or in Culver City with our history as a sundown town. And just, I want to pause to also think about, who enforced those policies at the time. And then also just how we have racial covenants that were enforced well into the 1960s. A majority of our renters are people of color. They're 45 years or younger. And we're so proud of our diversity. So I want to make sure we hold on to that part of our population of the city.
Okay. Now there's one on the general plan.
Mm-hmm.
What are your primary accomplishments as a member of the General Plan Advisory Committee?
Well, I have to be honest with you. So the general plan was launched last year. It got up and running, and then COVID-19 hit, and we just had our first meeting last week. So we've been on a really big pause. In the beginning, in the first, I attended some of the pop-up tent, kind of like throughout the city, at the Rock and Roll Festival, and a couple other spots and throughout the city. So very minimal. And I think that, we're just starting to really get into the meat. It was more of what we've done so far is really kind of getting a consensus about what are the issues in Culver City, what do we like, not like, and then talking about plans to reach people. I think it's really just important to note that it's a priority for me to really do outreach. Sometimes there's an expectation for people to come to the general plan committee or come to the city, and there might be barriers or just lack of communication. So we have to be extra hard to make sure we hit all communities, including our low income communities and immigrant communities as well.
Okay, thank you. This one is on housing, and specifically affordable housing, meaning housing that the average person or family can actually afford. And the question is simply, what should the city do to create affordable housing?
Yeah, so we need more housing. I know that we are expecting about 6,000 jobs in the next few years, and we're mandated to create about 3,300 units. So it's important, as we move forward with this, to ensure that we include inclusionary zonings where a certain percentage of the units that would be built will be affordable. I also know that the city, as part of the rent control ordinance, or the emergency ordinance, that there's a linkage fee study. So that would require developers to a fee that they would have to pay that would go into a pot of money to build more affordable housing. So I think that, we're in the process, the general plan process. So this is another place where we can really include what we want what we want to be implemented in the general plan. I'm all for including density, especially in our commercial corridors and near our transit districts. But we have to work with the community to decide what that's going to look like. But I'm all for that. We really need to include housing mixed with, I think that it really works when we have renter protections mixed with, the increase in housing supply.
Thanks. This one's on homelessness. What should the city do to clear homeless encampments?
To clear them. Yeah, so, I was on the homeless committee. I served on it from 2015, to about 2018. And so, this is a big thing for me, and especially right now, it's a public health issue. So we need to work with the people, the unhoused community. Right now, last estimates where they're about less than 300. So we need to work with all those people to make sure they get some kind of housing. I'm really interested in this idea that's going around about shared housing. It's much less expensive than, you know, permanent supportive housing, which I totally support, and with wraparound services, but that takes much longer to do. And shared housing is something that we can really implement on the short term with stock that we already have built. So it takes much less money to rehab. So this is a way that we can possibly, you know, take action quickly. And we have to develop relationships and trust with these people. We know that there's been, there's indicators that the total population in Culver City might have gone down, but there's an uptick in RVs. And so this is a strong indicator that it's economic reasons that people are falling into homelessness. And also that it was alarming that there was such a big increase in people experiencing homelessness for the first time in the last LAHSA report. And I'm really concerned about, as we move forward, when the eviction moratorium ends, what's going to happen then, and how are we going to support people? And so that's why I'm really talking a lot about prevention, rental assistance, and how we can advocate. I don't know if the state is going to be able to provide money, but really advocate to our federal representatives to help us with rental assistance and also possible mortgage relief as well.
Okay, the next question I have is actually two questions from two different people, but they're about the policing in general. And I'll give you both of them. Would you support a civilian oversight committee of the police? And the other is, what other steps would you take to transform a police force into a peace force?
Yeah, these are interesting questions. I'll start with the first one. Yes, absolutely. I know we have a chief advisory committee right now, but there's limitations with that since they report directly to the police chief. So I would love a civilians oversight committee and would be open to doing whatever that takes to make that happen. I know that that's the process. Why that's important is, you know, we've seen, you know, small amount of cities around the country kind of implementing some of these things. And while they've seen like some kind of some good outcomes, but the one thing that was always lacking was that the point of this was to have like accountability, a lot of civilian accountability over the police, and they need to report to city council, who oversees the police department. So I think that that's really important if, you know, we're going to go down this direction. The second is to change police to peace officers, kind of referring to these other cities that have done similar kind of actions. I think that we need to think about public safety in general and what that means. And so if there's substantial change with it, if it's just changing names and switching things around, but it's really the same culture, then I don't think it makes any sense. It's just this, it's kind of like doing reform. We've done reform, we tried reform. We know that reform has small changes, but overall we're looking at a cultural shift. And so I'm looking forward to, instead of a punitive and culture of violence, to looking to a more restorative justice kind of based approach to public safety.
Okay, this one is actually three separate questions, and I'll ask them, I'll tell you what all three of them are, and then I'll ask them one after another. The first one is, what would you do to decrease traffic congestion? Next, do you support closing streets in downtown Culver City? The other is, what other downtown street, other than downtown street closure, what mobility and safe transit options do you support and envision for Culver City? So I'll ask the first one again. What could you do to decrease traffic congestion?
Yeah, so that's a great question. You know, the best way to reduce congestion is to decrease the amount of cars that are on the road. We all got to experience what it was like the past few months with when we were on everyone was staying at home, and kind of like what LA could look like when there are no cars, the environmental impacts of that, how carbon emissions drop significantly, and we're seeing that as cars get back on the road, that those are immediately going back up. So I'm really all for multimodal transportation options. I want to support our bike and pedestrian plans. I know that we are implementing smart bikes throughout the city, 15 locations. I was pleased to learn that one of those is in a low-income community. And I think those people who might be more dependent upon public transportation versus people who use it for leisure or more fun reasons or for a variety of reasons. But I'm really pleased. I think we need to really focus on those communities who are really public transportation dependent. Yeah, so the second one was about the closing down the streets. And I think it's a wonderful experiment that we're doing right now on Main Street in Culver, where one street, the westbound lanes are going to be closed, one street's going to be open for restaurants, and then the other will be for emergency vehicles, but also bus and bike lanes. I know there's the mobility department is looking at other places to do that throughout the city. I think this is the way to get things moving, offering people alternative modes of transportation and based on mobility. So it doesn't mean that everyone is all of a sudden going to become a cyclist or going to be walking everywhere. I think this also ties in with housing. So as we look at how we're going to, when we build housing, I love the idea of mixed housing, mixed use housing. So people can, the more options we get people to work, live, and play in the same areas, that's going to take people off the road. And that's the big cultural shift. And I know, you know, there's a lot of issues that go around with that. And so I think we're seeing that is starting to really take effect. And so that's really exciting in my mind. I really want to see that go further. I'd also like to see micro transit stations throughout the city. So having more microbuses, I know that's in the talks right now, but really hoping to flesh that out and implement that. And then also transportation hubs, micro transportation hubs around the city to connect the city. And then your third question was?
The third question is, other than downtown street closure, what other mobility and safe transit options do you support and envision for Culver City? I think you mentioned a few just answering the second part.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of those. Yeah, I think I did have it all in there. Yeah, I guess the only thing is also working. The other ideas, just this is more mobility idea in general, is to working on the first and last mile. So possibly working with companies to provide that infrastructure, whatever that may be, whether it's e-scooters or some other options. Yeah.
On the, this question is on the Inglewood oil field. How should the city keep our residents safe from the Inglewood oil field?
Yeah, this is very, very serious, and we must do all we can to end neighborhood oil drilling. I know there's been previous efforts to, you know, with setback and bonds, and now there is a plan for the amortization plan to purchase the field, and then to phase out all oil and gas activity, and then urge LA to follow suit. And I think we could do that. I know that we're waiting to hear back from the Community Standards District, a public health report. And as we think down the road about what could happen with that space when we do that, some people have talked about affordable housing, but we, you know, can look to examples in other cities like Carson and Eugenia Village, where that had really negative impacts on children. So just there's other ideas where we can make it into a park or whatever that, you know, looking to the community and working with LA to decide what could be, that land can be transformed into. But yeah, it's very crucial for everyone. You know, there's 3 fault lines going through that. So, you know, we have to be against fracking, because any slight thing, if that sets off, it's really the end to us. So this is a very, very important issue.
Thank you. This one is on government spending. And it says, what is your position as to whether Culver City should implement a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline per the recommendations of Moss Adams, Culver City's former internal auditor?
Yeah, I've been hearing and reading about this issue, and I'd like to get more information. I'm in the process of trying to get information, but of course, we need to be transparent. We need anonymous hotlines for people to feel safe, to whistleblow if necessary, if there is any of this going on. I think it's just it should be a no-brainer at this point, and so. Yeah, but as I said, I'm still learning and researching about this issue, and I'm interested in keeping in conversation with people about this. So, yeah, it's really important to transparency and open data, especially if we're going to move forward in the next few years. We're going to be really in the, you know, a lot of austerity. So we need to make sure things are running as efficiently and make sure we're not where we can audit what we're doing and make sure that we're as efficient as possible as well.
Thanks. The next one is on social justice. As we transform from systemic racism and create a more equitable Culver City, how and what will you do to factor in sustainability? Please give specifics.
Yeah, so kind of what earlier I talked about mobility. So making sure as we have a lot of equitable solutions throughout the city, but making sure that, for instance, our mobility issues, that we are really working with our low income and immigrant communities. As far as, for sustainability, the county has a great sustainability plan. And so I hope that we can follow suit and follow the direction and create that. I know we have a sustainability subcommittee, so I'd like to see us increase in that area. And yeah, I think we need to look at, as we were doing the general plan committee at our last meeting, we talked about, when we look at housing, and I already discussed some of the equity issues in housing. And when we look at policing, some of the things in our budget to look at through the lens of equity. I also think we need to encourage more dialogues about systemic racism. We're witnessing what some people think might be a moment in time, but this is actually a million moments in time. And this one just happened to have that is highlighted at this moment. So we need to engage, especially white people need to engage in these conversations and deal with it. And I know it's really difficult, but we have to have that mindset no matter what we do. So this is why it'll be so important as we develop our sustainability plan and including within our general plan to incorporate that lens into that planning.
Okay, okay, Freddie. I think your half hour is just about up, and looks like it is. So we'll switch candidates, and thanks for coming.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
And now we have, Albert Vera is our next candidate, and Albert is just coming into the meeting here and getting his mic to work. And I will unmute you, Albert. I'm sorry you were muted there. We get into this thing where I hit unmute and right around the same time that the candidate hits unmute.
There you go.
Okay. Okay.
I think we lost Albert. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. We lost our last candidate. I think he's going to come back. We're hoping. Yes.
Try to do it again.
Hello?
I just,
Hi, Pete, are you there?
okay.
Turn your phone off.
Albert,
Yes, sir. How are
you're
you?
unmuted, finally.
Finally.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Albert, you've got 10 minutes or 15 minutes to say whatever you like, or you can take questions anytime after the 15 minutes. We'll start with questions.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say happy Independence Day to everyone. I believe it's okay to be proud and celebrate Independence Day while we recognize that not everyone was liberated at the same time. We can and we must continue to do the work so that the America that was born on the 4th continues to and evolves to be reborn and to be truly inclusive of all of our inhabitants. I just wanted to tell you all just a little brief story about myself and my Pete, you hear me okay? Because I got a bad connection on this side. Okay, cool. So everybody, my name is Albert Vera. I was born and raised in Culver City, lived here my entire life. I was born to immigrant parents who came to America to live the American dream. And in doing so, they established Sorrento Italian Market, which I now own and operate. You know, I remember growing up in the store, and that was my whole livelihood, the store. And going up to Northern California with my father, which he had a truck route at the time, and he would deliver Italian goods door to door up in Bakersfield, Porterville, Lindsay area. It was then that my father developed his love for farming and the land. And quite frankly, he started buying his first ranches when I was probably 10 years old, and hence Vera ranches come into play. So fast forward to today, my parents have both passed about 10 and a half years ago. And I was at a crossroads when they died, whether I should sell everything off or continue the tradition that was created by my mother and father. So I opted to continue the tradition. As far as the ranches go, I took over the farming practices when they passed, and my love for the environment and for the general health, safety, and environment of the land opted me to look at other ways, alternate ways of farming. In doing so, with the help of my girlfriend, I transitioned my entire ranch operations over to a fully sustainable organic operation. And I'm proud to say that as of today, I am the first certified organic table olive grower in all of California. And why is that important to me? And well, several reasons. One, people are following suit. They're jumping on board and they're saying, this is the way to go. But more importantly, it's about the environment. It's about providing the best possible environment and economy, really, for all of us. I noticed the amount of chemicals that we're putting into the ground, the amount of herbicides and pesticides. It's just alarming. Anyway, So for me, the fact that people are paying attention, noticing, and to date we have 4 or 5 different farm operations that have submitted paperwork for organic operations is great. I would love to bring that practices and bring those sort of skill sets that I've learned in my ranch life to Culver City. And it's all about sustainability. It's all about environmental protection, regenerative farming, regenerative soil. I've started practicing those same sort of beliefs in the store, where I completely got rid of all my beverages that were in plastic bottles. I transitioned over, so now I only sell glass, can, or cardboard boxes of beverages. A little more pricey on my end, not as much profit in it, but for the overall picture, to me, it's not about profit. It's about doing what's right and doing what Mother Earth is calling me to do. It's about sustainability. It's about environment. There's so many different organizations that I'm passionate about and involved with in the city. I'm just, I was chair of Civil Service Commission. I'm now currently a commissioner. We rotate every year. I'm involved with the YMCA. I'm on the board of directors of the Upward Bound House, which to me is just a great organization where we really provide rapid rehousing to those families most in need. Families, children who are living in their cars or on the streets, we provide them housing. We provide them the skill set and the jobs needed so they can go out on their own and their own housing and their own lives. I'm part of the Habitat for Humanity. I've been volunteering there for five years going. My girlfriend got involved in the global builds. I would have been on a global build in Tahiti this year, but with COVID, that didn't sort of pan out. Talking about my store and taking things over 10.5 years ago, I'm proud to say that to date, my youngest employee at the store in terms of tenure on the job is 7 years. The longest employee I've had in the store is over 30 years. The point that I'm making is that, to me, it's about providing a living wage to everyone. It's about providing what people need to survive, especially in these sort of times that we're all going through. During this COVID transition, this COVID pandemic rather, I was blessed to be able to stay open in the store and provide my community with essential services. So blessed though that I found my business actually increased. And rather than profiting and keeping those profits, I identified needs within the community that to me were important. And one of the major needs that I identified was through the Backpack for Kids program. I was talking to some of the members and identified that there is definitely a food instability, a food scarce with a lot of these families, and they really fear where their next meal is coming from. They were willing to allow me into their organization and provide meals on Thursdays to the backpack families, as well as I opened it up to the general public to really just provide meals to those in need. To date, we've served over 5,000 meals. And that's not to pat myself on the back, but that's just to say that if you identify a need and you can do something about it, then by all means, do it. Whether it's the smallest or the largest sort of portion, it's about community. It's about doing what's best for the community at all costs. I look at city government like I look at the customers in my store. It's about customer service. It's about how I can satisfy, how I can please my customers. And the same sort of transitions to the constituents in Culver City. It is about customer service. It's about how do I make people happy? How do I provide them what they need to make them happy? And in doing so, that involves conversation, that requires conversation, but listening and identifying needs of certain people and identifying that I don't have all the answers, but I'm there to listen, and I'm there to, if I'm wrong on an issue or if there's another idea that is better, I want to change my mind. I want somebody to convince me that my way is not the right way. This is the way. I'm open to listening. As much as in the store, if somebody comes in and they don't like my prosciutto, well, I want to hear why you don't like it. I think it's good prosciutto, but if you don't like it, then tell me why, and we'll work on it. Much so is with Culver City. Sorry, I think there's a parade of cars going by the house right now, so sorry for the noise. I think it's a block party. Good Lord. Okay. Pete, are you there? Okay.
I was just going to say, we can hear fine.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. So I think I covered really all that I wanted to cover, you know, in terms of my environmental sort of stronghold and what I did up north in Northern California, and how we need to reduce our carbon footprint, about customer service, and about bringing people together. I found, you know, there used to be in my mind sort of a political season where every political season, everybody hated each other. We were all on each other's throats. But once that political season passed, then we were all sort of kumbaya and everybody was on track. Unfortunately, it seems to me that that political season hasn't left for a while. To me, there's a divide. We need somebody to get the gap and to bridge that divide, to listen to all sides and to realize that everybody's opinion, everybody matters. Every voice matters. If somebody says something that I don't agree with, I need to realize that just because I don't agree with it doesn't mean that their opinion is any less valid than mine or anybody else's. We need to pay attention. We need to listen to everybody. And only through listening and conversation can we really create the diverse community that we all, so at least me, desire. I think we all desire. We all need to really try to bridge that divide, bring both sides together, and work on Culver City, bringing Culver City forward into the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. With that, Pete, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, we'll do some questions. The first one is on campaign finance. And it asks, will you take money from fossil fuel companies, police unions, or developers, or the Chamber of Commerce, whose members include developers and oil and gas companies? And is there anyone else you will not take campaign contributions from?
Oh, great question, Pete. Yeah, so I won't take campaign contributions from any of those listed above. Who I pride myself on taking money from is the mom and papas, the small people who come into my store, who live in the city, who share their stories with me, who tell me what's important to them, who have ideas and concerns, local businesses that believe in what I'm about and what I'm doing for the city. To me, it's all about keeping local, providing the best possible service to my community. So in short answer to your question, no, I won't take any money from the above listed, but I will take money, and I have taken money from my customers, from small mom and pop of sort of customers, small neighborhood businesses, like I said, that believe in what I'm doing and believe in my message.
Next question is on the general plan. What are your primary accomplishments as a member of, oh no, this is on this, I'm sorry. That's all right. This is, you're on the Civil Service Commission. What are your primary accomplishments as a member of the Civil Service Commission?
So fortunately, Culver City has been really proactive in terms of keeping their employees happy. We've only had, since my tenure on the commission, which is 4 years, we've only had one hearing come before us. We have the second hearing coming before us now. What was the question? What was my my accomplishment so far? All right, so I think my major accomplishment so far is the one hearing. We're under, as chair of the commission, I was able to actually sit on the hearing that we're doing now, which I obviously can't talk about, but to review all the plans, review everything that the city has gone through, and I'm sorry, my phone is sort of cutting out on you, sorry, and provide the city with the best possible service. I recently requested, and I think it's really, for me, good, training for all of our commissioners. We have a trial coming up, we have a hearing, and relatively new commission that we have, I requested that as a body, we have formal training in terms of the hearing coming up and how we can provide the best service, the best service going forward that puts the city and the appellant, puts everybody in the best possible light, and so we can be as fair and impartial as possible.
Thanks. The next question is on rent control, specifically the local Culver City ballot initiative that will be on the ballot in November to retroactively require a referendum of Culver City voters before any rent control could be enacted. It, in effect, takes the power away from the city council to enact rent control and gives it to the voters.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, great question. I believe that all renters need protection. It's imperative. If we're going to build a community that's truly inclusive, we need to provide that level of protection across the board for every one of our residents, citizens. I do also believe in total inclusivity. I think that the community as a whole should be brought into the conversation. If we are truly going to be an inclusive community, we need to bring everybody to the table. We need to hear all sides, all conversation, all opinions. All opinions matter. We need to take that in consideration. Just because five people are elected doesn't mean that we can provide the best possible judgment or laws for the rest of the city. I think it's imperative for council to listen to all people, and ultimately what the people want, the people will get. If that means that we vote on it, then we vote on it. But I think it's about being inclusive. And to me, being inclusive is bringing all voices to the table.
Let me clarify, you're at this point, are you planning on voting in favor of the local Culver City rent control initiative?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not. I believe that the council has put in a lot of work. We should respect the work that they've done and move forward from there.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that. And somebody has just asked, wasn't your store one of the few sites people could sign the petition to put that initiative on the ballot?
Yeah, yes, it absolutely was. Like I said, it's about being inclusive. It's not about taking sides at this point. It's about really allowing all voices to be heard. And just because I'm for or against something doesn't mean that I'm willing to allow that voice to be heard. That it's a democracy. It's a free democracy. And I believe in so that all voices need to be heard. All voices matter. And it's about inclusion. So yes, I was one of the sites that the ballot can be signed at. Doesn't mean I'm for or against it. It just means that I'm trying to be as inclusive as possible.
Thank you. This is a two-part question on policing. Well, actually, I'll just ask the question separately. They're both on policing. The first one is, would you support a civilian oversight committee of the police? Yes,
absolutely. I think at this juncture in the game, transparency, it's all about transparency. It's all about doing the right thing and about the community feeling safe and comfortable. If a community can't feel safe and comfortable in their policing, they're not going to be safe and comfortable in anything. So yes, I support that.
The second question we have right here on policing is, what other steps would you support to transform a police force into a peace force?
Well, I don't really necessarily know the the concept of a peace force. I think in my understanding of the question, Pete, is that if, I don't know a police officer, and I've talked to many of them, I don't know any police officer that joined the police department to be a homeless advocate or a drug rehab specialist or a mental health expert. No, they didn't. Unfortunately, all those mechanisms were taken away. All those tools that were in place were taken away, and everything was left on the police department's lap, so to speak. I think it's imperative that we create a system that is tried and true, that we have a system in place that works well, that we can transition all of the mental sort of health-related calls, all of the drug abuse calls, all of the homeless calls, to social workers who are equipped, who have been trained, who've dedicated their lives to this specific purpose. So that's my answer, sir.
And this is on the Inglewood oil field. How should the city keep its residents safe from the Inglewood oil field?
Well, being that we have such a small portion of the Inglewood oil field, 10% of it, and the rest is county property, I think it's imperative that Culver City stresses our safety measures, that we make sure that our fire department, our health and safety department, or LA counties rather, is on board and inspects these sites regularly and make sure that everything is up to date while they are operational. Ultimately transitioning into decommissioning the oil fields altogether. Obviously, we need to oppose fracking across the board. There's just nothing good that comes out of it. But on a local level, we need to really make sure that the safety implements, the safety mechanisms in place are being adhered to, they're being checked on regularly, and there's safety nets to check the safety inspections.
Thank you. My next question is on homelessness. What should the city do to clear homeless encampments?
Well, Pete, I don't know that the city can do a whole lot, unfortunately. Our hands are relatively tied due to economic constraints. When I joined the Upward Bound House, homelessness was a huge concern of mine. I've been on the board of directors of Upward Bound for the past 4 years. And through that program, I've really developed a, what's the word? I developed sort of a sense that these people out there on the street are humans, that they have a name, they have voices, they have needs, they have concerns, they have families, for God's sakes. We need to really recognize that going forward and sort of humanize the issue of homelessness. They're not just somebody on the street. That's somebody's son, that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody that means something to somebody. We need to really provide wraparound services. And we can't do that solely with Culver City. We have to really rely on the big bucks, and we need to really put pressure on our government, on our federal government, on HHH, to get the money that we need to provide wraparound services, to buy housing. I think once we address some of the issues that are out there, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's substance abuse issues, whatever the issue might be, we need to address those issues first. And then from there, we can get people into transitional housing, get them the job skills like we do through Upward Bound House. We get them the job skills that they need to go out there on their own. We help them with the DMV, get their license together, get whatever paper, if they're undocumented, we help them get their paperwork in line. We get them immunization for their children. We take them to doctor's appointments. We do the complete wraparound service to make their lives whole again, whatever it is needed. So I don't know that we can just eliminate the people under on Sepulveda or under the encampments. We need to really, like I said, realize that they're people. They have names. They have stories behind them. We need to learn those stories. And I think the more we humanize, the less scary they'll become. They become real people then. There's a person that lives across the street from me over on at Sereno's. Berryman in front of 7-Eleven. It's a lady, and now she has a gentleman living with her. Her name is Mary Ann. But in talking with her, she's like, hey, I don't like going to the bathroom in a dumpster in the back. You know, I don't like people yelling and calling me names as they drive down the alleyway. You know, I fell on hard times. I mean, those are the stories that really need to be heard, and that we as a community need to understand that these are people. These aren't, you know, I bet if it was a stray pet or an animal on the street, everybody would be there to pick this animal up and bring him and provide him sort of that level of comfort, that humaneness that is needed. And I think that's what, that compassion, that heart, we need to have a heart and really address the situation and realize that they're people. Go ahead, Pete. Sorry for being so long-winded on that. I'm just really passionate about that.
Getting back to the police question on one particular issue, one of the participants asked, why did you speak in front of the city council in favor of the police department getting military weapons? By that they mean drones. And did you also support the war wagon?
One, I didn't speak in front of the city council on the war wagon. I'm opposed to that. I don't think that Culver City needs that. I think we have all the tools and resources at our disposal, whether we call LA County or LAPD. You know, the argument is that, well, it takes a little long to get it. It might do this, might do that. I'm willing, you know, to take our chances. Unfortunately, it's not about taking chances, about providing the level of safety and protection. So I didn't speak in favor of the war wagon. On the drones, I don't recall whether I spoke in front of council or not, but just to set the record clear, I am in favor of the drones. I think it's a valuable tool that has proven itself time and time again, not only for the police department, but for the fire department as well. You know, recently we had an arson that got set on Jefferson Boulevard. Our fire department deployed the drones, determined that the fire was extinguished, that there was no longer a threat to the community, which is great. I think in terms of the police department, they, in my opinion, have done everything they said they were going to do. They deployed the drone, and I think almost instantaneously there's a notice on Nexel that drone is being deployed, which they said they would do, and they are doing it. They follow up with after-action reports. The drone, I think, has saved the city a huge amount of money in terms of office resources. They found suspects hiding in chimneys and backyards. They were able to make areas clear that provided safety for the officers and first responders, you know, whether it be fire showing up on scene. So I don't know if that answers your question, Pete, but yeah, the war wagon I didn't speak on, but I was not in favor of it. The drones, I don't know if I spoke on, but I am in favor, and for the reasons I provided.
Well, I don't think I'm going to ask any more questions since we're 1 minute or less away, but if you have anything in the last partial minute to say, you have the floor.
All right, Pete. Well, I really appreciate everybody's time, and I truly appreciate your consideration for me as your council member. Just know that I think I can be the most accessible candidate out there. And it's all about unity. It's all about bringing this community together and realizing that no one has the right answers. No one has all the answers. It's about listening to either side, listening to anybody's idea and opinion, and all opinions matter, and we need to take that to heart and act on that. So in short, thank you very, very much for all of this. I know you had probably better ways of spending your afternoon, but I really appreciate your time and everybody's efforts. You there, Pete?
Now I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
And that wraps it up, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Albert.
All right, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. I'll let Albert out, and now I'll unmute everybody, and we can all sort of say goodbye. Everybody should be
Thanks,
unmuted.
everybody. Great job, Pete. Great job, everybody.
Thank you, Pete.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for the great questions. I tried to clear them and get to as many as I could.
Okay.
The campaign's only just begun. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Can you be sure and tell everyone about Thomas Small and the other candidates?
Oh,
What?
excellent. Yes, there's one. There's one city council. Thomas Small is running, I think, for re-election, and he couldn't be here today because it's his 20th wedding anniversary. But he asked if he could participate in the future. And with that, we'll wrap up the meeting.